Hey guys. Oh, good to see you. Yeah, no, I just, this is where I give my talks here all the time. This is Mitchell Lake, right? And I come here when I'm doing my YouTube videos because it's usually pretty quiet. There's a couple kayakers out there right now, probably wondering why I'm talking to myself. For the Walk for Life, we do this every year, right? The youth ministers in Red Deer Catholic schools, we often bring whole buses of high school kids up to Edmonton, and we do this Walk for Life through Edmonton from the legislature grounds. And this year, because COVID, we can't do it together, so we said, well, let's all go for like walks by ourselves and think about life by ourselves. So that's what I'm doing. And I thought I would just walk around Mitchell Lake. So yeah, I think it's great. So here's the thing. We have characterized the abortion issue in such awful ways, right? Pro-lifers have done this, pro-choicers have done this as well. And so we're so divided and we're not hearing each other. When you're going on your Walk for Life today, here's what I want you to think about. How can we try to understand the other side instead of being more divided? Here's what I'm talking about. During the last American election, a lot of people held their noses and voted for Trump, even though they didn't like him, right? They would say, oh, I hate his policies on refugees, say, or I really think we need to fight climate change, or I just hate the way he treats people, the way he talks, the way he acts, but I'm gonna vote for him anyway. Why? Because he's pro-life and abortion is the most serious issue. On the other hand, here in Canada, we have Trudeau as our Prime Minister. And Trudeau is like, no, we won't have any pro-lifers in the Liberal Party at all. And so if I'm pro-life, but I agree with what the Liberals stand for on a lot of issues, I feel like I can't vote for you because you won't even let me, nobody who has my value set could possibly represent me in your party. How did we end up hating each other so much? How did we end up so divided? So here's the thing. We characterize our opponents like they're these ridiculous people, right? And you see pro-lifers do this for sure, right? Pro-lifers they'll go out and protest, and sometimes you'll see people dressed like death with like a scythe and be like, abortion is murder, abortion is mean, and what are we implying? If you have an abortion, you're a murderer, you're a mean person. The pro-choicers aren't any better, right? Pro-choicers show up with these costumes on and they look like they're from A Handmaid's Tale. And what are they trying to say? Oh, if you're pro-life, you must want to enslave women so that they merely have children and stay at home. Well, this is a ridiculous misrepresentation of either of our viewpoints. See, the pro-life viewpoint is actually super rational. We're not spiteful against women or trying to suppress women or anything like that. What we're saying is that all life is sacred. Oh, that is a big ant. Pro-lifers believe that all life is... Whoa, another one! What are you looking for, your sister? Oh yeah, buddy! The pro-life viewpoint is that all life is sacred, especially human life, right? We believe that humans are on some different level. And if you're Christian, it's because we're created in the image and likeness of God. If you're not Christian, most people still agree that human life is on some other level and it should be valued at a different level. Well, the pro-lifers take this really rational approach and say, okay, all human life is sacred. All human life should be protected by law, regardless of size or age or level of development or race or sexual orientation or any of those things. All life is sacred and ought to be protected by law. As Horton says,
but a person's a person, no matter how small.
Now, Dr. Seuss actually didn't like it when pro-lifers would use that line for their pro-life message, but Dr. Seuss wasn't exactly a moral authority, was he? So anyway, the point is this. The fact that someone is smaller than someone else doesn't mean that they have less value. The fact that someone is less developed than someone else doesn't mean that they have less value. So to the pro-lifer, we just say the fetus in the womb is clearly human life, right? It's got its own DNA. It's not like my hand, which is part of me. Yes, it's human and it's alive, but it's got the same DNA as me. The fetus in the womb is its own human. It's got its own human DNA. It is human life. Philosophically, I would say it is a human person. Now, a condition that pro-choicers might want to use is they might say, well, no, we're not going to respect it as a human person until it is like self-aware. Self-awareness is the thing that gives us our dignity, right? Why are humans more valuable than cows? Well, humans are more self-aware than cows, and that's why it's okay for us humans to eat beef, right? That would be an okay thing to do, whereas cannibalism is wrong. But if you make self-awareness the condition and you say until someone is self-aware, they don't have the full value of human life, you're left with this reprehensible position of recognizing that a baby, a born baby, an infant, is less self-aware than a cow. Therefore, is it more morally good to eat an infant human baby than to eat a cow? Obviously, very few people want to espouse that, but this is the thing. We would say as pro-lifers that all human life is inherently valuable. So the question for the pro-lifer is it a human? And if it's a human, it ought to be protected by law. But see, that's not the question pro-choicers are asking. What pro-choicers want to know is, what are you going to do for the woman? See, pro-lifers approach it from this very logical, rational, like, this is the philosophy, this is a human, it ought to be protected. And pro-choicers are coming at it from a point of empathy and compassion, which is also a good thing, right? And what they want to say is, what are we doing for the woman? And they'll give us the most extreme examples, right? What are you going to do for the woman who is raped? What are you going to do for the woman who is a victim of incest? What are you going to do for the woman who is impoverished? You're going to make her have a baby that she does not want to have? And see, that sounds like the compassionate viewpoint, because let's be honest, you can't empathize with an unborn baby. It doesn't work for us, right? We don't know what their life is like. They're not self-aware. They do suffer pain, but, you know. And so from the compassionate perspective, it sounds like we need to do something for the women. But now we've got a problem. How do we help the women, but acknowledge that the unborn baby is a human? See, I think a lot of pro-lifers make a mistake. We're trying to keep everybody in our realm where we're saying, okay, but logically it's a human life. And so we come out and we show people how awful abortion is, right? Pro-lifers like to use graphic images. When I say we, I personally don't like to, and a lot of pro-lifers don't. But you'll see these graphic images and they'll come on postcards to your house, or you'll see a truck driving down the highway and it'll show an aborted fetus. And the logic there being, if people could see what abortion really looked like, if people knew what was happening to these unborn babies, everybody would be pro-life. In my opinion, though, we're making a mistake. Because what's happening is the pro-choicers aren't asking, is it a baby? Is it a human? The pro-choicers are asking, what is the compassionate thing to do for women? Well, guess what? When people see a graphic image, they don't feel like we're being compassionate towards women. The challenge for us as pro-lifers is this. How do we communicate our very logical point, but also demonstrate compassion for women? So what do? I've walked all the way around the lake now. We're no closer to a solution, right? We recognize that the pro-life position is very reasonable. We recognize that the pro-choice position is very compassionate. As pro-lifers, we need to be able to figure out how to communicate our viewpoint. Our society is so polarized right now about everything, right? And what's happening is every time the rhetoric increases the polarization, the pro-life viewpoint is being more and more dismissed. If we come across as people who are not compassionate, we're not solving the problem. Pro-choicers' question is this: how do we help the woman who is pregnant and does not want to have a baby? That's the question. As pro-choicers, yes, we want to protect life in all its stages. Ultimately, to do so, we have to persuade our culture. We've got to address that question. I know that it is more compassionate for the woman to have a baby. I know that psychologically it does huge damage to a woman to have that living child taken out of her. I know the pro-life position is compassionate. We need to figure out how to frame it in such a way that the pro-choicers will also see our response as compassionate. That's the challenge. That's what I want you to think about on this walk. God bless.